Thank you for joining us for e-commerce and the American small business, a timely conversation about our new normal, where online everything has become an essential component of daily life and the economy. I'd like to thank our sponsor, eBay, for their support of today's event. While online selling and buying have taken on a larger role in these unprecedented times, e-commerce is not new, and what's more, it has for years given small businesses the opportunity to sell goods globally and even compete against large businesses. Given our increased reliance on the online marketplace today, we're going to spend the next hour understanding the role e-commerce is playing in meeting consumer demand and giving struggling businesses a leg up during these very complex times, particularly in this time of COVID. As more and more small businesses transition to the digital global marketplace, how will consumer behavior change? And as with any regulated industry, what policies can be implemented to encourage a healthy environment for e-commerce users? We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers today to help explore this topic, including 3 members of Congress and many small business owners who utilize e-commerce to sell their goods nationally and internationally. Before we get underway, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at @TheHillEvents. That's @TheHillEvents. And use the hashtag #TheHillSmallBiz. So original. It's easy. We are broadcasting live and we'll be taking your questions throughout the program. As with any live stream, you could experience occasional trouble with the video. If you refresh the page, hopefully that'll fix the problem. My first guest was elected to Congress in 2018 and is a member of the Small Business Committee. Prior to joining Congress, he was a small business owner, an entrepreneur, and a co-founder of a community bank. He had a bunch of McDonald's franchises as well. I'm eager to hear his perspectives on entrepreneurship and economic opportunity. Representative Hearn, it's great to see you. And I'm going to say this is the first time in my career, and I've interviewed tens of thousands of people. My family, my origin story of my family is Bartlesville, Oklahoma. So, technically you're my family's congressman, so it's great to be with you today, Kevin. Let me just ask you, when you think about I just mentioned the time that we're in, which, COVID time, and, everybody's been shoved online. What do you think the pieces are that we need to understand about the small business ecosystem and digital platforms today?
Well, I think what you're seeing, Steve, is a lot of things that many companies, I will use McDonald's as an example, many companies have sort of evolved over the last 5, 6, 7 years, got some of the bugs worked out early on. And I really feel for those small businesses that are having to accelerate this, taking a 5, 10-year horizon that they were looking at evolving to a digital platform and having to do this in 4, 5, 6 months, 90 days in order to stay valid and viable. Most of us have never heard of the 3 S's of commerce, and that's storage space, safety, and protocols. We hear a lot about data breaches and financial breaches and also site design. So these are things that are really just incredibly important to the success of being online. And again, trying to do this in the midst of COVID and keeping your employees and your demand for your product, it's incredible stress on our companies.
Do you think, you're a member of the Small Business Committee, that there's a literacy among your members, about those safety and protocols that we need to have? Because, part of this is, I shop online all the time. I remember when that used to be a novel thing, but now people are doing. But the question is, do we have those safety and security protocols built into the degree we should?
We do, and it's somewhat in conflict. Maybe some big businesses, as we know, like Amazon and Facebook and eBay. eBay's been around a long time. Gave people who wanted to auction their things off a platform, and now there's so many others that have evolved, and in their own right are businesses providing services. And it's interesting you mentioned about it used to be a novel concept. How many people have you talked to over the years that said, I'd never buy anything online, it's not safe? Well, now if you're buying a lot of things, they're online. So it's also changed not only the underlying businesses, it's changed the buyers, the consumers' ideas of, is it safe? And it has to be safe. And, I think what our big platforms are doing, again, the marketplaces on these various e-commerce sites are instrumental and paramount for the success of small business into the future.
Now, Congressman, you have written a piece for The Hill. It's a tough piece. I enjoyed it. But you basically talk about eBay, Amazon, Google, Facebook, Yelp, these digital platforms that have become so vital for small businesses today. And you say the Democrats are trying to take them down, essentially. That they're I kind of note, just to be fair, the president has not been that kind to Amazon. But in that space, do you think that it is misplaced to have a fear of the, let's not call it a monopoly, but the oligopolistic power of a few platforms?
It is, and what what's happened in a free society and the free market capitalism we have in this country, one that's so great, and while we shouldn't destroy it, there are a lot of different sites that are peeling off in this and allowing people and taking some business with them. Many would take MySpace back, who thought they were going to own the social media platform, and now they're irrelevant. I'm just a huge free market capitalist. I think that we have to be we got to be careful, and that's what my op-ed really speaks to. Is we got to be careful about denigrating people who have started in their back offices, in their garages, in their dorm rooms, and have evolved and have grown. There is a responsibility of those original owners and the shareholders and the boards of those companies to not be overzealous and be one-sided. I think both Democrats and Republicans have taken both Google and Facebook to task, and others for taking down particular free speech ideas. So, it's a fine balance we walk. But what's also happening, we'll use Amazon as an example. Usually, when you think about these capitalists that grow these companies to become very overbearing, they drive up costs. You go back to the early turn of the century, last century, where we had oil prices being controlled by Rockefeller and things being broken up. It's the reverse of that now. We're driving down costs, and so it's really kind of created a real conflict in Congress about what you're really working on and how you're going to challenge those very ideas of both growing and then being too big to not be challenged.
I'm interested, I know you're in Washington, but you get back to Tulsa a lot and also Bartlesville. And I'm interested I interviewed the other day, just to throw out my thinking on this, two fascinating women. They're sisters, and during the government shutdown, they created a company called Furlough Cake. And they have been booming online with e-commerce, but they were doing this during another time of financial stress, went online, created this. They've recently opened a brick and mortar shop down near the National Harbor. So it's kind of like going against the trend. And they said, we're existing in both places. We've got this spot we've opened up. They opened in July this year, which I said, are you crazy? But they did. And I'm interested, when I think about Bartlesville and the streets I knew as a young guy growing up, a lot of them were shuttered and shut down, but some are coming back. And what are you seeing in Tulsa? What are some of the stories of businesses you've seen that have been able to navigate both the e-commerce space, but still maintain a presence in the life of Tulsans and Bartians?
Well, one of the things we know for sure, Steve, is the business community as we knew it pre-COVID is certainly going to look a lot different post-COVID. There are going to be restaurant businesses that were our favorites to go to that will no longer be in existence because e-commerce using technology will just will not work for their business. The reverse of that's also true. Companies that were purely online are going to be able to take advantage of those vacuums and footprints, and sort of these niche markets where somebody can walk in because they've been used to buying this online. It can come into a particular area and be able to touch it, feel it. There's still, it's one of these things that's a real fallacy in thinking that you can just take society, because we're a very young consumer group all the way to folks that are getting up in their years, and they're not going to transition. And I think that's where some of the more quick service restaurants, some others have done a great job in sort of doing everything, having dining rooms in restaurants, having takeout, having drive-through, having mobile order, mobile pay, having delivery. All of these, you can touch every aspect of the consumer base. And if you can do that, you're going to be winning as the economy continues to recover, and you're going to be in a great spot.
I'm sort of interested in the steps that Congress has taken to shore up companies, with the First CARES Act and on. One of your colleagues from Congress, Yvette Clarke, is going to come on and say, a lot of these resources went to big firms and big businesses. A lot of small businesses, are still struggling, still need support, and this pandemic is not over. Where are you in that? Do we need to be doing more to stand by small businesses right now? We're not at the end of the tunnel of this. Where should Congress be? Where should we be supporting? Where should we not be supporting small businesses and their payrolls and all that?
Yeah, so listen, here's the thing. Whether you look at the constitutional idea of eminent domain, basically the government declared eminent domain on the revenues of businesses in America, and you're supposed to be getting just remuneration for that. if you look at those, I mean, 80% of the loans that were given out, over 5 million, so over 4 million of the loans were given to small businesses under $150,000. And those, and by its very nature, are very small business. In Oklahoma, it was even a higher percentage than that. But when you look at the average workforce of 10 or 15 employees, that this is going to be something, and has been something, that keeps everybody employed, keeps them in their jobs and off of unemployment. But what's also it's important to note that there's still $135 billion that's sitting out there. That's been sitting out there since July. It's already been authorized and appropriated, sitting there ready to be put back out into the workforce, keeping businesses open, jobs open for employees to keep America moving forward. But we seem to not be able to want to get that done. This is something that doesn't have to have the HEROES Act, the HILS Act, or anything else. This would pass overwhelmingly. I doubt there would be anybody that would vote no on getting this $135 billion back out into the business community. So with that said, I think you're going to see sort of the rules change on that. And they have been proposed to be shrunk down to 300 employees or less, and having losses of 25 to 50%. That really hasn't been finally negotiated. So really hard hit businesses that still have a demand for their product, that can keep the jobs open and keep people employed.
So can I ask you, I would just get a point of clarification, because it does get kind of murky when you're looking at all the contending legislation that's out there. You just said something very important. I want our audience to understand it. $135 billion package, it's already been authorized, it's already been appropriated, it's sitting there. So, and I assume the White House would sign off on it as well. So what technically is the barrier to that coming forward? Was it attached to the House bill? Was it attached somewhere? I'm sorry?
Politics. It's something that's very easy that they want to use as a sweetener, both sides as a sweetener to get something done. And meanwhile, the unfortunate part of this, and this is what's very frustrating for a freshman congressman like myself that's been in business for over 30 years, is that we shouldn't be playing politics with jobs in America. People are hurting. We can go talk about states and municipalities, but when it comes to individuals and jobs, we need to stop playing politics. And just for point of clarity, this is not a standalone $135 billion. This was part of the second tranche of money that went into the CARES Act that wasn't fully taken because many businesses in America weren't sure if they were going to be able to stay open anyway. And now we're seeing jobs continue to come back. This is an opportunity for them, those second round of small businesses, to go take that money to continue on moving toward the end of the year and into the first part of next year, so they can keep people employed, as opposed to starting to lay people off because the demand is real soft in their business.
One of the fascinating things I like to do is to lurk in the corridors of eBay and Amazon and others and look at who has storefronts and what they put up there. I've also become familiar with a company called GoDaddy, which is the largest internet registration firm in the country, has identified a lot of micro ventures. These are just 1 or 2 person companies, often what the CEO of GoDaddy would call side hustles, which have become primary hustles for people, finding e-commerce and space on business. And I'm just wondering, is that level of economic entrepreneurship recognized in any way in the halls of Congress? Do they know how robust and dynamic the creative sector is, of people launching new micro ventures that could become considerable? Because if you look at the typical language and legislation, we think about small business. You look at large banks and small business loans; they're still pretty high up the ladder, and so this kind of micro business, micro venture, isn't even on the radar screen for some folks. So I'm just wondering how you look at it.
Yeah, Steve, I'm a person who started my first business in 1985 as a single person writing software when I was in college before I went to grad school at Georgia Tech. And so I was the person, I always said I was the chief cook and head bottle washer writing software. And so I'm a person that's lived every one of those, that evolution from 1 to over 1,000 employees in a business. And I can tell you, the simple answer to your question is no. Members in Congress don't understand that because, quite frankly, I would guess it's 95% of the folks in Congress have never created a single job in their life. And so if you haven't had that risk put on you, that notion of the American dream where you take an idea and you borrow money or you get friends to help you and you put that money down and you work and you become the person that signs both sides of the paycheck, and I've done that for 30 years. When you do that, you truly understand risk reward. And it's hard to explain that to somebody that's never experienced it. So I keep pounding away at that. My fellow members of Congress, I actually get a lot of folks come up to me on both sides of the aisle to talk to me about business, and I really appreciate that. I'm not denigrating toward the folks across the aisle or those folks even on my side of the aisle that have never created a job. And I think that's what makes it special is that we have 435 ideas in the House that we try to work together behind the cameras to get something done and keep the politics out of it. It's just right now it's an election year and it's crazy up there trying to get anything done.
Well, Representative Kevin Hern, it's terrific to be with you. Representative Kevin Hern represents, Tulsa, but also, the Bartlesville area where my family is originally from. It's a pleasure talking to you about small business and e-commerce platforms in America today. Thank you so much.
Steve, thanks for having me. Anytime.
My next two guests are members of Congress from New York, a state that early on bore the total brunt of this coronavirus pandemic. Representative Yvette Clarke is the vice chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, and she's co-chair of the Smart Cities Caucus. And Representative Adriano Espaillat is a member of the House Small Business Committee and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. And they're both engaged in so many different caucuses out there, but we tried to pick up some of the highlights. But let me just start with you, Congresswoman Clarke. I'm sort of interested in taking the temperature of this question. Most small businesses I know don't spend all their day thinking about Washington, D.C. or regulators. In fact, they try to, whatever idea they're trying to bring forward, they're trying to sort of find their way, make business, pay their employees, get ahead, and they live in a kind of ecosystem of regulatory rules that they have to do, but they don't think about us. But right now, we've got the pandemic going on, and we also have a time where social injustice, racial injustice is part of the country, and we're looking at systemic inequality in the country. I'm just interested, what is the relationship between government and some of the businesses you're thinking about need to be tweaked, need to be better at?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation today. There are multiple levels of government that we're talking about here, and certainly all of them have the responsibility and obligation to facilitate a healthy small business climate, whether it's the federal government, whether it's our state and municipalities. You rightly stated that the COVID-19 virus has devastated the state of New York. And as such, the challenges that our small business sector face are unprecedented. We've done the best that we can, I believe, at the federal level, the state level, and the city level to try to undergird and help give our small business sector a small landing, a soft landing, excuse me. But nothing has prepared us for the level of hardship that our small business sector is facing right now, alongside, of course, consumers and everyone else in our society. So I would say that we have an obligation to do everything we can right now to undergird our entrepreneurs, our small businesses, our mom and pop establishments that line all of our commercial corridors across this nation. And we need to act very swiftly.
Well, Congresswoman Clarke, the Congressman Hern just talked about $135 billion of authorized appropriated money, in the small business sector that's sort of in there that both sides are trying to use a sweetener. I mean, do you see it the same way? Is that package something you support getting out there? And do you have confidence we will in time to save the bulk of these small businesses that are under such stress?
We're losing businesses each and every day. When you say in time was when we passed the HEROES Act way back in May. And unfortunately, yes, we are in a hyper political climate. And, our concern is that we're not selecting winners and losers, but that we have to undergird the economy by which our nation is faltering right now, whether it's high unemployment or it's the ability for customers to help support our small business sector by having the means to do so with such massive layoffs, such massive furloughs. You can't pick winners and losers. What we've looked at is a comprehensive package in which the small business sector has been centered and focused, but without the ability to address the continued spread of the COVID-19 virus, which impacts every jurisdiction around this nation. If people are spreading this virus, they're unable to actually help the economy. They're unable to work. We're overloading our hospital systems. It continues to have a bearing on a healthy small business economy. So addressing small business without addressing those who have to utilize that small business, the climate in which everyone is operating is foolhardy. And that's something that we must address. I believe it has to be comprehensive. There's no way that you can save one sector of the economy, thereby picking winners, and saying that every other sector of the economy that has a bearing on that portion of the economy, well, you'll have to wait.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense.
Right. Now, Congressman Espaillat, I have been moderating so many different forums about this period of time, what's happening in business and people's lives, how they're teaching their kids. And so much has been shoved online. We used to talk about being a digital country. We weren't. Now we are. But my friend Larry Irving was on with me the other day. He was from New York. He grew up in New York, used to be head of the National Telecommunications Infrastructure Administration. He said, see, where I grew up is still not connected, in an urban area. We can talk about the urban-rural divide, and it is not even. It is very wobbly in the country. And so as we talk about e-commerce and small business, I'd love to hear from you where you think the gaps are in our understanding, so that as you're thinking about small businesses that are making it, do your other entrepreneurs out there have the schools, and the skills and connectivity they need?
Well, first and foremost, I agree with Congresswoman Clark that this pandemic has been very tough, and we see what's happening in Europe right now, in cities like Madrid, where they're getting ready to lock down again. Where this is by far not over yet. And so this is a major hurdle as we begin to approach, for example, the restaurant business, which is looking to open soon in New York City at the 25% level. What can they do to open up their businesses safely? And what can the business community do so that indoor dining and other indoor activity, small business activity, doesn't contribute to a second spike in coronavirus cases here in New York City. So this is still very much among us. But yes, rural broadband is a problem, access to that, but it's also a problem locally in urban settings where you don't have 5G, when you don't have access to broadband. And that continues to be a major problem. We must do a major infrastructure bill that would address that problem nationally, not only in the rural areas, but also in the city areas as well. And small businesses often are impacted by this disparity that exists in terms of technology and access to broadband services and state-of-the-art technology services that we don't have when you compare us even to other countries that are doing far better than we are. But I think that one of the bigger problems that the small businesses in my district are facing is the fact that they weren't able to access the immediate help that we provided for them, the PPP forgivable loans. The traditional banking institutions went to their preferred customers, and that wasn't them. And I'm talking about the small mom and pops that have sometimes under 10 employees. Those are the businesses that provide the vast numbers of jobs across America. And they did not have access to this funding that was made available by SBA. It took us a second round of funding and $60 billion to ensure that the credit unions and the local banks that have a long-standing working relationship also with these businesses were able to give them that access to money. So they need another round of this funding. Many of them were shut down during the pandemic. It was only the essential businesses that were open in New York City, grocery stores, supermarkets, pharmacies, hardware stores, and the likes. But the other businesses were shut down. They're trying to reopen right now as we speak. And they may not have gotten this kind of funding, and they don't have, many of them don't have access to, state-of-the-art technology that will make them competitive in e-commerce. So this is a great challenge for us as a district, of course, and a great challenge for America. I think it was over 6,000 businesses in my district that eventually benefited from PPP, but I think it should have been a lot more.
Let me ask you both kind of, I don't know how I'm going to phrase this, but I want to ask you, Congresswoman Clark, you're a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Congressman Espaillat, you're involved in the Hispanic Caucus. So I'd like to talk about, that for a moment, that when, I'm just wondering, as we talk about so many businesses getting in the e-commerce space, getting new platforms, almost every business I know that's pivoted in a slightly better way has figured out what their online strategy is going to be. Does this give, I don't know how to put it, does this give companies in communities of color that have grown in toxic times, who've grown in where we've seen systemic discrimination and systemic racism and limits with financing in both communities, does this give them an opportunity to leapfrog out of those environments, or is that naive on my part to think that might be a possibility? Congresswoman Clark?
Yeah, I think that what we see in the physical world, people also experience in the virtual world. And the realities are that until we develop algorithms that are developed without baked-in discrimination, the tools utilized by successful firms on the e-commerce platforms will elude communities of color. And, there's discrimination, unfortunately, is baked into so many avenues of our lives that it really makes it far more challenging. One would believe that, counterintuitively, that it would be a level playing field. But, we understand that these platforms are created through the use of algorithms and a whole host of other companies that bake bias into how they rank companies on platforms. When one is looking for a particular good or service, how Googling or using search engines determine placement within those search engines. So there's a lot more work to be done in the virtual space to root out discrimination as well. I also want to indicate that when communities are left behind in the education space, when they are left behind in the technology space, making that leap from brick and mortar becomes a bit more challenging than one who may have begun their entrepreneurial ventures online. So that translation from brick and mortar into that virtual platform is still elusive in many communities of color.
Congressman Espaillat, what does your map on that look like?
Well, it should be a level playing field, but it's not. And I'm really proud of the resilience that our small businesses have because they've done so well, basically barehanded, right? And technology should be a level playing field, but it's not. And in fact, our data is used in many ways that often leave us out and don't provide the kind of opportunities that should be provided for our small businesses. These platforms are often that they don't provide the language access that is necessary for our client base, our customer base. New York City, for example, is a very diverse city, but we're still far behind in providing language access in technology to many of our customer base. And so, whereas one part of the city may benefit from a particular platform or a particular development in technology and the virtual world, we often see that community and often immigrant communities that speak other languages lag behind. And so it should be a level playing field for everybody, and all ships should rise at the same time. But the reality is that it's not. And it will require our intervention in Congress to promote legislation and public policy that will level that playing field.
Well, look, one other thing, and this is a program we're exploring, the e-commerce dimensions, e-commerce platforms, but there are the realities of this. And I just want to ask you, there are reports out today that the CDC has reversed its guidance yet again on the issue of what it just issued, was that COVID-19 is an aerosol, that it could be, more than 6 feet distance we have, and what really matters are the air processors inside places in terms of this, which made me wonder, do we need to kind of find a way to help, resource-strapped small businesses find ways to solve their ventilation problems in their enterprises, particularly as we go into winter, thinking about restaurants, et cetera. Apparently, in the last hour or so, that guidance has been reversed again. So I guess I would ask you both of this as the legislative touch points for your constituents who are trying to find their own North Star between how to safely engage in commerce, both online, but also brick and mortar. And we have institutions like the CDC where, it's on or off depending. How do you folks, what sorts of things do you think we need to be doing today that we're not? Because I got to tell you, it sometimes leaves me very confused. Congresswoman Clark?
Yeah, we need to follow the science.
Yeah.
And I know it's very troubling in a time where our head agencies have become politicized. But the bottom line to it is that, ultimately we know that this virus is airborne. That has led to many states looking at how they work very closely with their institutions to upgrade their heating and ventilation systems. When a state like New York, where we're heading into our colder seasons, it has become an imperative. We're seeing this with our school system, and that will, of course, translate into concerns in hospital environments, in any enclosed facilities, whether they're restaurants or they are museums. We know that heating and ventilation is going to be critical to utilizing those spaces for humans to gather in any form or fashion. And so, everything that we've been trying to do through the HEROES Act, through the infrastructure bill that we've passed in the House of Representatives, is predicated on what we know the science has told us about this virus and how to beat it back and how to give guidance to all people, whether they're entrepreneurs or consumers, whether they're just everyday Americans. There are just some basic practices that have to be put into effect in order for us to have any semblance of normal life. And until then, we will all have to remain, sequestered, if you will, quarantined, until we can guarantee to the American people that the spaces that they enter and spend significant time in are healthy environments, places where they won't be susceptible or the risk has been minimized in terms of being able to contract COVID-19.
Right, Congressman Espaillat?
Yes, look, the world has changed, and as a result, we will have to change as well permanently. I remember how I used to look at folks from other parts of the world. I used to come into New York City with a mask on, kind of strangely. And now this is a common practice, and I look at folks that don't wear a mask strangely. And so the world has changed. And the ventilation system, for example, the New York City public school system has altered and changed its model 3 times already, its opening model 3 times. Science has not really gotten its arms around this virus yet and determine really what it is, or the long-term impacts of it. And we apparently this was known. This new report that came out in terms of the virus and its airborne characteristics was known. But yes, we're going to have to invest, and we may have to provide capital dollars to places like restaurants and other folks that do businesses indoors, so they have the capacity to build the systems that will ensure safety to their customer base, and that will give the confidence back to their clients and their customers to come back inside safely. You know, I was watching how yesterday a very well-known Latino urban singer by the name of Bad Bunny, the congresswoman may know his music because I know she's a great dancer, had a tour yesterday, a concert tour, except it wasn't in a big arena. It was in a flatbed truck. And it went through neighborhoods across the city of New York. It went to Harlem, Northern Manhattan, and the Bronx. And it was seen by millions of people online as he drove around in a flatbed doing his yearly tour that normally would have been done at a sold-out Madison Square Garden or a Barclays Arena. So these are the changing times, and we will have to adjust. And yes, government will have to provide the funding for businesses to make the safe adjustments for their customer base.
Look, we've all been around long enough that we remember people getting, their market front, in eBay or Amazon, whatever, and having an online strategy was an opportunity. Now it's become survival and, a health strategy, as you both know. And I think, that's part of what you're talking about in terms of, how this system and world is changing. I know, Congressman Espaillat, you've been working on supply chains. How do you basically make sure you get what you order and all of these other kinds of things that come into it. I hope you'll both come back. We're out of time now, but I hope you'll both come back and talk to me about the various dimensions. I really, really appreciate the scaffolding you have put around this topic. I'm very grateful. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke from New York, Congressman Adriano Espaillat of New York, thank you both so much for your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now it is time for the sponsor perspective portion of the program and a message from the sponsor of today's event, eBay. Here's Marnie Levine, Vice President of Seller Operations and Engagement with eBay America's with eBay's America. And hello, Marnie.
Thanks, Steve. eBay is delighted to sponsor today's event hosted by The Hill. As your audience may know, eBay practically started e-commerce 25 years ago when our founder, Pierre Omidyar, built a platform that brought buyers and sellers together under the premise that people are basically good. Our purpose-driven company started that Labor Day in 1995, so 25 years, almost to the date, and launched the concept that created the internet-based side hustle economy. Well, today we are thrilled to introduce the Hill's audience to one of my favorite eBay sellers with an amazing story, Angie Nelson, president of eWaste Direct. Angie and I have talked many times over the years, and I just love doing interviews with you and having you join us. So thank you for making the time today.
Absolutely.
So Angie, I'm going to start with, I think what would be an easy question for you. Tell us about your business and how you got started on eBay.
Sure. So my name is Angie Nelson, and I started my company in 2008. My husband and I were newlyweds, and as newlyweds and have no furniture in our house, so we went to a abandonment a business auction. And we stumbled upon ourselves with tons of electronic waste. So we ended up leaving the place with no furniture, but truckfuls of e-waste, electronic waste. So that's the entrepreneur in us. And we just decided it was just an opportunity and so we started our green business.
You guys were really ahead of the game with the circular economy and diverting. I know you diverted over 5 million pounds of waste from landfills. And you were doing this before it was definitely, the trendy thing to do. So that is just an amazing accomplishment. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we created this green business to divert the electronics from the landfills, right? By recycling properly. However, eBay allowed us to go the extra mile, and we are now extending the life of those electronics. So we're finding a second home for those electronics instead of processing them right away. And so that allows us to have an even more, positive impact for the environment.
We all know that e-commerce has played a critical role, right, during the global pandemic and throughout 2020 for sure. I'm wondering, how has your business fared over the last 6 months? I mean, I think at least you were a little bit ahead of the game with being a virtual company to begin with, but how have you guys sustained through this difficult time?
This pandemic had shut down Main Street for months. And so there was no shopping in stores, there was no in restaurants, there was no going to the movies, various stores, and much of the goods needed were not available locally for various reasons. So the e-commerce was the most viable solution for most people. Our store, our virtual store, was open 24/7 with a potential 180 million buyers around the world.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about, we hear in the news a lot about trust and safety, within the e-commerce world, right? There's no shortage of news reports about, can you trust what you buy online? As a longtime user of eBay, certainly a seller, I'm sure a buyer as well, how have you felt protected when operating on the platform?
I have trust because eBay does not compete with us, the sellers. So that alone is a huge plus for us. Also, eBay has policies in place to protect the buyers and the sellers. They protect the financial transactions. They verify the members. We have the peer-to-peer feedback system, return policies, tracking of the packages being delivered. And now you guys can have the new program for authenticity guarantee for the higher-end items. So, I certainly haven't had any issues, and their longevity, eBay's longevity and reputation, it speaks for itself, and we have been able to benefit from that as a small business.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, the 25 years certainly gives us a little bit of credibility in the space, right? To manage through a lot of ups and downs for sure. Angie, as you know, 96% of U.S. small businesses on eBay export, in comparison to actually only 1% of traditional businesses. That's amazing. 96 U.S. eBay small businesses export versus 1% in traditional. It's staggering. I understand that eWaste Direct exports 22% of its goods. How does eBay enable you to be a global trader?
eBay has been the pioneer for the online marketplace for 25 years, allowing companies to sell their products 24/7. And so I was hesitant to sell internationally because of my lack of knowledge on exporting goods, imports fees, paperwork, etc. And eBay took that burden off my shoulders. They closed that gap by establishing the global shipping program. And that just opened up the floodgates for us to go global with our business. And that meant we had to hire more people to keep up with the demand of the customers around the world. So it's fascinating to see, how many countries I've sold to, and the names of cities and everything, and how people just reach out to us in different languages. It's just fascinating how global we are.
So Angie, you are actively involved in the eBay Small Business Ambassador Network, and we thank you so much for being part of that program. And I know you've had the opportunity to travel to Washington, D.C., and you've met with members of Congress on behalf of eBay sellers. You were and you have been, and you continue to be a great representative. Can you tell us about that experience in Washington?
So eBay does a great job keeping the sellers informed and engaged on public policies that will affect us as a small business in the e-commerce platform. And, eBay just has our back. They want us to succeed. If we don't succeed, they don't succeed, right? And I am just honored to to have been invited to participate in all of these different events and use my voice to represent small businesses, and have conversations with the legislators and bring concerns. We're not just sharing how successful we are and how great we're doing and the local economy, but we're also talking about the struggles that we go through as small businesses, and some of the policies that they plan on voting on might be very good for corporations, but might actually hurt small businesses like ours. So I just feel extremely honored and blessed that I get to go there and use my voice to help others.
Absolutely, and we feel it's more important for members of Congress to hear directly from you, right? Certainly, we're there to help support, but nobody knows your business and your needs certainly better than you do. So Angie, if you were giving advice to any retailer who is not online but considering e-commerce, because we know that's happening a lot with stores closing and people being sheltered in place, it's still in some areas. Kind of, what advice would you give to those retailers? What would you say? What should they do?
Selling globally, it's the new economy, and we must tap into it. Any retailers need to have an e-commerce presence to incorporate or supplement their operations. So having an online store is like having your doors open 24/7. You make money, you sell while you sleep. And and eBay provides all the right tools to make you successful. They have the latest technologies, they have marketing tools, research, promotions. They have everything to help you succeed in your business. And because once again, if you don't succeed, they don't succeed. So even is just the global presence that gives you unlimited growth opportunities.
I think one of the most important things that we could do is continue to work with the small businesses to, enhance our own platform, build things that are of necessity, right? I think, a tech-led company often builds a lot of fun gadgets and widgets and, a lot of creative technology, which is terrific, but we want to make sure we're building things to help our sellers succeed. So Angie, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking to you. I can't wait to talk to you again soon. And I really appreciate being here. So thank you. And now back to you, Steve.
Marnie and Angie, thank you so much for that. It's a fascinating data point about the number of eBay sellers that sell internationally, that sell globally. I think that, if I heard right, it's about 26, 28%, which is, staggeringly higher than the norm out there. Fascinating. So over the past half hour or so, we've been discussing steps that can be taken to improve our digital infrastructure and, by extension, our digital economy. Up next, we're going to hear from those like Angie with firsthand experience in this space. Michael Swope is the Chief Operating Officer at 1-4-Silver, a retailer of tabletop goods founded through a love of auctions. I have a love of auctions too. I'm just going to put that on the table. And estate sales. 1-4-Silver uses multiple e-commerce sites, including eBay. Kira Kotler is the founder and CEO of EverViolet. EverViolet sells lingerie and loungewear designed for breast cancer survivors and patients, and she's gone 100% online. Deontay Cole is a veteran and the founder of Black PPE. Again, truth in advertising. I just placed my first order on his website. So I got the deluxe version, which sells cotton face masks and other personal protective equipment to help communities stay safe during our current health crisis. A big welcome to all of you. Kira, let me just start with you for a moment, and I'm gonna, we're taking questions from the audience, and I've got one here that's come in. It's from Alice Jones, who's the owner of Alice and Waffle, and she asked very bluntly, "Is there a future in e-commerce?" So let me go to you.
Well, I do believe there is. As you mentioned, we went 100% online at the start of the pandemic, and we've seen, even despite a lot more people being online, a lot more competition, you could say, coming into this space, we've seen incredible growth, both from a traffic and revenue standpoint. We've also found that there's a way to reach more people in more regions, as well as to partner with more people online. So I think there's a tremendous future.
Now, how do you do it? I mean, I'm going to pick on Deontay for a moment. So I just went in, looked at My Black PPE and found his website and went to it because I knew I was going to be talking to him, and I wanted to journalistically compromise myself, and get that stuff. But when you're doing that, do you take the platform that you have where folks can come and buy your products, and do you link? This is for Kira. do we take that and do you go to some of the other big e-commerce platforms out there like Amazon, like eBay, others that are out there, or do they find you? In other words, I'm interested in kind of the ecosystem of connectivity with the digital platforms. Kira?
Oh, well, for us, we do a lot of outreach through Google. We do a lot of outreach through social media. We also have a tremendous community that we build online in our various support groups, et cetera. But we do connect with other businesses. We do a lot of collaborations. We try and support each other. So I think there's a really lovely ecosystem for businesses to support other businesses.
That's great. And Deontay, since I was talking about your product, which, so thank you in advance. I haven't gotten it yet. I didn't feel like we knew each other yet for a friends and family discount, although you've got a good sale going on right now, I should say. How did you get started? I mean, how did you get started? What were the big challenges for you? And how are things going from an e-commerce perspective?
Well, for us, we got started out of a love of seeing what's going on in the world and recognizing that everybody didn't have access to products during a time period. And from being a person who has had brick and mortar stores previously, I was looking for a way to take the experience that we already have, our connections, to get access to products, be able to bring product to the market to the customers in a quicker, more efficient way. So that was our way of getting in. The challenges were initially trying to find a way to reach out to all the entities who weren't able to get access to products and expand that network so everybody knew who we were and how to get access to our products quickly and efficiently.
Well, one of the stories that I want to tell about you, if I have it right, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that you were a supplier of PPE and then you were having a hard time being the middle person in that supply to folks who needed PPE, who were trying to order PPE, that you couldn't even get it for yourselves. So you went out and constructed your own supply chain. You kind of outfoxed governors, maybe the White House. How did you do that, and to what degree was digital commerce, the deliverer on that? It's a fascinating story because everybody was in a crisis at that moment, and you seem to have swum through that crisis to a thriving business today.
Yes, we were looking and trying to source products for government agencies and hospitals, and we were watching the news like everyone else, and there was a challenge, one, for those entities to be able to have and find enough product, but also for the average person who wasn't looking for medical grade PPE to be able to get access to. So we had an outpour of individuals reaching out to us to try to get product, and we really felt bad that we couldn't provide it. So that was our way of carving a niche and reaching out to suppliers and makers to be able to get products in the market quickly.
Well, thank you. Well, Michael, let's jump to you. You, as I understand it, your origin story was you were addicted, like I am, to auctions and buying, getting and buying. Maybe I do more buying than selling, but you were out of your small one-bedroom apartment, and now you have a 5,000 square foot facility. Tell us your story of what you're doing and how it came together. And again, within the spirit of today's conversation, how did you exploit the waves of e-commerce?
Sure. So the owner of our company, James Dyer, actually started the business out of his one-bedroom apartment basement. And he just had a love of going to estate sales and auctions, and he would find interesting things that kind of focused on tabletop. And we expanded from there. We went from the basement in his one-bedroom apartment to the basement in his three-bedroom house to now a 5,000 square foot facility where we employ 5 people full-time. So it's an interesting origin story for sure. And eBay has absolutely been instrumental in our journey to get there. We are a company largely founded on eBay, and our business started there and has now expanded to 5 other marketplaces.
So give people online, a taste of what you do, what you have. Are you buying from one place and selling to another, or are you filling a different kind of niche?
Sure. So we specialize in flatware, crystal, stemware, and china. And we sell on eBay both new and used, but in all of our other marketplaces, we sell just new product. So we work directly with major brands and major manufacturers to bring those products to those marketplaces. So we're authorized retailers for about 40 of the world's leading tabletop brands, and we offer those products across all of those platforms.
You know, Kira, one of the questions that's been raised by those that have been either willingly looking at an opportunity or shoved into kind of the digital online platform world is whether or not you can have real relationships with your customers, whether you can create enriching, ongoing relationships with them. And I understand in the area you're at, you know, where you have breast cancer survivors and you're creating intimate apparel. I don't know that world, but I'm sort of moved talking about it. Does it become, what are your strategies so it's not a kind of, you know, one and done moment, that you have an ongoing relationship with your customers that is meaningful?
That's a great question. So right when the pandemic hit, I was so struck by how challenging it must be to navigate a cancer diagnosis or to be a provider to cancer patients during that time. So the first thing we did was reach out to all of our medical partners and offer up whatever we could to help them support their practices and their patients. And what they told us was that because they were spread so thin, they really didn't have the capacity to offer the emotional or the psychological support that they typically would under normal circumstances. So we took it upon ourselves to really do a lot of outreach, to churn out content, to link their patients with our community. We have a journal series and a blog and an online support community. We also do one-on-one support. So for anyone who's online, if they're looking at our product, or even if they're just going through a hard time at the beginning of diagnosis or through treatment, we offer up support to them as best we can. You know, what I feel right now more than ever is that we need to be authentic, we need to be present, we need to really reach out and be kind to one another. And so that's become really the forefront of what we're offering right now, in addition to our product.
I'm very moved by that. And Deontay, you have, you know, essentially your business, which you founded, is a Black-owned business. It's a veteran-owned business. I want to recognize you for your service and what you did out there for our nation. That I'm just interested, give you an opportunity to tell those people in the policy world that are watching now, what are they missing and what do they not know about a Black-owned, veteran-owned small business today that they need to hear?
Well, I think the most important thing that people need to know is there's plenty of them out there, right? There's a lot of us who are seeking to find our way into markets and into business, and we're excited, motivated business owners who are excited to bring markets to products to everybody. And you know, as a veteran, I think it's important to see and recognize a lot of the skills that these veterans bring to the table that are unique and different in the world, that I think a lot of people who seek to help fund or bring opportunities for business owners, whether it be African American or veteran owned, it's a huge market. So we look forward to being a part of it.
That's great. And Michael, we got a question from the audience for all of you, but I want to, before I get to that question, I want to ask you about the safety. We just heard Marnie from eBay talking about, you know, what's the social contract out there when it comes to, you know, smart, safe, secure consumer sales and where you're buying from. And I'm just interested in whether or not you think we're good enough where we're at, or does there need to be more out there in terms of, I don't know whether to call it legal infrastructure or digital security infrastructure, you know, for so many people who have been shoved online today. I'd love to get a snapshot from you about whether you feel the e-commerce world is as safe as it should be.
Yeah, I think shopping online is extremely safe. We've certainly come light years ahead of where we were many years ago. I think each marketplace brings its own set of regulations and its own set of rules. And some marketplaces are better than others when it comes to protecting buyers and sellers equally. eBay does a fantastic job of creating a safe environment that's good for both buyers and sellers, and that does a nice job of making sure both people are protected in the transaction. And I think that reflects in their customers. They're usually a happy group that is happy to find that hard to find item they've been searching for every day. And I think you'll continue to see that. All marketplaces have some levels of protection, but some do it better than others.
Well, it's wonderful. I could talk to entrepreneurs all day, and I just think each one of the little origin stories is so interesting. But we have a question from Kathy. Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Terrell. I'm here in New York City. I am the owner of I Love to Be Selling. I'm an online sales and social media consultant. And my question is, how can online sellers best prepare for holiday 2020?
Ha! Good way to end this. Kira, what are you going to do? What advice? What replicable advice can you give for preparing your online commerce for holidays 2020?
Well, I think we need to be prepared that there's going to be a lot more activity going on online. And sort of to what I was speaking about before, how can we differentiate ourselves by being authentic, by being meaningful, by reaching out in a way that's really offering customers what they genuinely need right now, whether it's our organic face masks or it's something that's really essential and critical to quality of life right now. I think that instead of superfluous items, I think it's going to be important to really focus on the essentials and what's really going on during the holidays, which could ultimately be very a challenging time from a COVID standpoint.
Thank you for that. Michael?
I always tell businesses stock their shelves early. When you're not busy, get prepared for when you're going to be. Our fourth quarter is always our busiest quarter of the year, and I think that's because we sell products that often are used when people gather at family events and gather for dinner. Tableware items and flatware becomes more essential at that time of the year. And I think we're going to see a very large increase in business because people are staying home more than ever now. And a lot of our sales have generated from people wanting nice things in their home. And I think that's important. And I think that is one of the keys to our success.
Fascinating. Deontay, I'm going to give you the last word on this cool question.
Well, I would say the same thing, that we have to get ahead of getting the products in. But the other significant and most important thing for us is to start marketing now. If we're preparing for the holiday season, we reaching out to our customers now because everyone's purchasing well before the holidays. So this is the time to be preparing yourself and your products to market for your customers for the holiday season.
Well, thank you for that. I'll tell all of our viewers now, I rarely endorse anybody. I'm not really endorsing, but I'm going to, I think that your three companies are all doing cool things in cool ways, and it's great to be talking to folks that are so optimistic despite the toxic, world and circumstances we're in right now. So to Kira Kotler, founder and CEO of EverViolet, Michael Swope, Chief Operating Officer of 14Silver, and Deontay Cole, owner of My Black PPE, where I just made a purchase. Thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, that brings us to the end of our program today. A big thank you to eBay for their support and to all of you attendees for joining us for this discussion. For those of you who missed any of the conversations this afternoon, we're going to have a video up from the event up on our website shortly. I'm Steve Clemens. Go online. Be well.